This episode of the Podular Modcast is brought to you by Recovery Effects and Devices. Quality handmade effects and modules paying homage to classic synth and effects designs while innovating for today's studios and musicians. Hello, my name is Tim Held. Welcome to the Podular Modcast, where we
scale the sonic peaks of modular synthesis.
Hey gang, welcome back to the Podular Modcast, episode 2. Today we have Cindy Reichel. Cindy is the co-founder of my favorite store in the entire world, Patchwerks, the modular synth store here in Seattle. But you don't have to live in Seattle to shop there. They have an online store. I'm not telling you what to do, and I know Sweetwater sends you candy when you buy from them, but I don't know, if you're into supporting a small business, and you want to buy some modules, go check out their online store and see if they have something that you'd like, and you can feel extra good about your purchase knowing you helped out some really awesome people in a really awesome store, and it's doing so much for our music community here. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox here, but here are some events for those of you in the Seattle area or those of you visiting Seattle in the month of April. April 8th, Spectral Processing Presentation Workshop. That's at 3 p.m. It will be at Patchwerks, and it's Peter Dodds leads a presentation workshop on spectral processing. April 15th, from 1 to 6 p.m. at the Melrose Market Studios. Wow, this is crazy. They do so much cool stuff. I'm just going to read off the event page. Join us Sunday, April 15th, 2018 from 1 to 6 p.m. at Melrose Market Studios for an afternoon of exploration and networking with fellow synthesizer enthusiasts. Try out some vintage gear, check out the latest production from Korg, Roland, and others, and share ideas and techniques for creating exciting new sounds. See, this is the type of stuff. Patchwerks is so cool that it's not just a store. It's just a place for... It's a hub. It's just, I don't know. You'll see. We're going to talk about it some more. I've known Cindy for 3 or 4 years. I met her through a group collaborative project called Monster Planet. It's really cool. 4 or 5 different people get together and improvise over a visual artist named Leo Mayberry, who just cuts together a bunch of old B or sci-fi or just weird video clips. It's a lot of fun. It's probably the most fun I've ever had performing live, and it really shaped just kind of how I view live performance in general now. I bring this up because we talk about it a little bit in our conversation, and we don't give any history. So now you know. So when we say Monster Planet, that's what we're talking about. So this was my first episode of the podcast that I recorded. Cindy was nice enough to have me over into her studio, and she made it really easy and comfortable for me. Luckily, we're friends, so that helps. But she also is just so nice, so knowledgeable, and just so cool. So had a great time talking with her. Unfortunately, Ian isn't here for this one. Like I said in the episode 1 intro, Ian's going to be popping in and out of the episodes for the first run of 10 or so. I'm going to try and stagger them, though, so we get Ian at least every other. So hopefully next week he'll be back. Before we get into Cindy and I's conversation, I just want to talk a little bit about how much Instagram has helped me find a bunch of really cool new modular music. I never thought Instagram would be the source of that, but it's proved to be really, really great for it. In fact, the music that you hear right now that has been playing through this intro, it's an artist going by all caps T-A-E-T, Tate. I don't know how to pronounce it. I apologize. But the song is called Closed, and the album is called Notebook 7. Been really enjoying it. I think you guys should all check it out. So yeah, I just wanted to throw that in there. And if you guys have some music that maybe you think I'd enjoy, that you want played on the show, send me a link. podmodcast@gmail.com. We're just about to get into Cindy and I's conversation, but first, one more order of business. So, dear listener, let me ask you a question. Do you like to be part of exclusive clubs? Do you like access to exclusive material that is not available for free? Does that sound enticing to you? Does that sound like I'm a fucking fraud? Guys, I'm having a hard time with this. But the fact of the matter is we have a Patreon. And we have, donor rewards that are yet to be defined. Here are some ideas I have. I would like to make a cassette release, or a vinyl release would be really cool, of the all the different patch challenges from our different guests, like a compilation album or something. Stickers, t-shirts, all that kind of stuff. I don't know. Do you have any ideas? So in summation, we have a Patreon account, and you can find us at patreon.com/Podular Modcast, where you can come and help, or not help, but rather gain access to an exclusive community. That just gave me an idea for a donor reward. How about I make you your own ASMR recording where I talk about control voltage, low frequency oscillators, slope, envelope generators, and 184 HP. I'm so sorry if you don't know what ASMR is. But go Google it. Thanks for listening. Go Google it. Go Google it. Go Google it. Go Google it. Go Google it.
So I've been into music about as long as I can remember. I first got interested in making music probably when I was 5 or 6. I think I really was interested in, every time I had access to a piano or an organ, I was just really interested in playing that. And my parents recognized that and got me one Christmas a little organ, kind of a kid's toy organ, and I just was all over that. And I must have been probably 5 or 6. So, that led on to, once I got to junior high school, I joined a band, and one of the teachers in our school had like a Juno synth, and actually was generous enough to leave it in the school library so that the students could go in and start, playing on it during lunch breaks or whatever. So that was where I got a little bit more serious about synthesizers. And,
it's like 12?
Yeah.
12, 13?
Yeah.
Man, I wish I would have had access to that.
It was a great opportunity. And
yeah. So
we had a little band, and we just did really horrible covers of, 80s music.
Yeah.
And, so all through high school, I was really heavily involved in the very small but tight-knit synthesizer community where I lived. So I grew up in Northern Ontario, so there were only a handful of us, but we were pretty hardcore into it and into music, and things just kind of went from there. And then I didn't get into modular until around the time that the Dope system started coming out. A friend of mine bought a system, so I had a little bit of experience with that, and thought it was great. But then there was this period where modular was just kind of obscure, and not many people that, were, by then I was in Seattle, so not many people in the Seattle community really had modular systems yet. So this was like the late 90s, maybe?
Okay. So it seems like it's really picked up in popularity just in the last 2 years or so, like really breaking in like mainstream and stuff. So.
Yeah, and I think you see that reflected in, how many online communities there are, how many festivals and synthesizer, Sorry about that.
So the cat just jumped up onto, what is that big giant synthesizer there?
This is an Oberheim 4 voice.
Oh, wow.
Classic.
Oh, well, that's...
Beautiful sound.
I'm going to do some editing, but that's staying in.
Sure.
So let's backtrack a little bit. So you're from Northern Ontario.
Yes.
When did you come down to Seattle?
I came to Seattle in about 95 originally.
Okay.
And, I had always wanted to live on the West Coast, so I initially went from Ontario to Vancouver and spent some time living there, and then decided I wanted to come to Seattle for a lot of reasons. I mean, the music scene here was great. It always has been, but especially at that time, things were really rolling here, and I had a lot of friends here, and it just seemed like a good choice for me at the time. I still love Vancouver, but so I came to Seattle around 95 or 96, and been here most of the last 20 years or so. I did leave for a couple years to go back to Vancouver to go to school there, and but most of the last 20 years or so I've been here, and part of the music community here, which has always been really strong, and I think that's one of the great things about this city is the community is so great. I mean, things like Monster Planet really help because it's different people every month. You're bringing people into the community and getting them together, and all kinds of collaborations come out of that, and people get to meet each other, so it's a great way to bring together people that might not have otherwise ever played together. And not every city has a Monster Planet, It's something that's really unique to Seattle that I think has really helped bring people together and kind of develop a community even just around that one monthly night, And it's not the only monthly night either. There over the years, there have been a number of other electronic music nights that have come and gone that have really been very popular and well attended. And I think it's great you can get a good number of people to come out on a weeknight here consistently, week after week or month after month. And there's just a critical mass of people that are interested in not just listening to this kind of music, but also making this kind of music. Meeting
Andy and Chris, and I actually met Ian through Monster Planet. Like I said, I'm pretty new relatively to electronic music, so to kind of see this improv, generative, ambient collaboration thing happen, it was I don't know, it was something that I never thought of, but once I saw everybody doing it, I was kind of like, duh, like this is one of the coolest ideas. So it's a really great scene. But I think Patchwerks has kind of gave it a shot in the arm. It's kind of this new hangout. It's like when I go there, I feel like I used to when I always would go to record stores. I still love going to record stores, but it's not quite the same, that like close-knit community, and you can like talk with everybody and try stuff out, and hey, you should try this. It really has that similar feel to it, so it's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's great because it's a space where you can come in and instantly hop on something and start being creative and start maybe experimenting with pieces of gear that you wouldn't have otherwise had access to. That was a big part of it, was the fact that there aren't easy ways to try something before you buy it. And of course, a lot of modular and synthesizer gear is available to order on the internet. But it's such a personal thing, right?
Yeah.
Like you can watch a YouTube video of a demo of a piece of gear you're interested in and read the manual and think, I think this is something I would like. But until you really hear it and experiment with the interface and, are these buttons the kind of buttons that I like the feel of or whatever, it's really hard to know, when you're investing that much in something, you want to make sure that it's really what you want and was going to work for your system and your way of making music.
Yeah.
So it's nice to have that opportunity to try things, I think, for people.
Like you said, you could go on Muff Wiggler or you can watch all the demos, but having that hands-on experience is so valuable in it's kind of a dense world to get yourself in. It's a steep learning curve, and to have people around to hang out with who are all there for a very specific reason, like more specific than being in a record store. I feel like with with modular, there's a level of gearhead in everybody who's there. So it's cool, everybody scratches each other's back and really figures stuff out.
The other thing I love is we have a lot of beginners or people that heard about modular from a friend or from the internet or whatever, and they come in and there's this sort of moment where you can see like, this is overwhelming. Like, I don't even know where to start. And one of the things I love is often, of course our staff is there to help people with get introduced to the basic ideas, and we'll take people around and show them how to get started. But often the other customers in the store will jump in and say, "Oh, hey, just here's some helpful tips.
Yeah.
Or, this is how I got into it," and they strike up a conversation. And it's great to see, even without us intentionally making these introductions, I've seen people get to know each other just by being customers in the store at the same time.
That's so cool.
On the same day. And, that's really great to see. That was our whole goal, was to really provide a place for those kind of interactions to happen.
I feel like if you spend an hour in there, you could walk out kind of having a rough idea of, okay, what would my basic setup be to get started with this? So
and there are definitely some brands and products that are easier and more accessible for people that are getting started. Like Doper, for instance, is great for people that are new to modular. Everything is really simple. The interface, everything's easy to read. It's very logical, and kind of the modules go in a linear fashion, and we have a system set up where everything kind of goes from left to right in a way that makes sense. Then of course, once you've been at it for a while, then you want to have access to some of the more obscure and weird modules that are out there, and we have those too for people that have been at it for a while. Mutable stuff is really interesting, and taking a very different direction than what a lot of companies have done, and I think that's reflected in the popularity of their modules. So they've definitely, and it's interesting because there are some people that are they don't want menus and they don't want digital displays,
right.
And I think they've really found a good balance between providing all the advantages of a menu or saving and loading and all of those types of functions, while at the same time making it playable and not, making you menu dive too deep. And a lot of beginners, if they've come from a synthesizer background, they're used to things like presets and menus and displays being part of the interface. So it's not, it's a neat kind of a way to ease them into the complete randomness of having a system where every time you're starting from scratch.
Right. Which is, it's kind of the scary, attractive, and daunting aspect of getting into modulars is that kind of. So
I mean, I've had times where I've set up the same patch exactly in the same way, and then as I had the day before, and it sounds completely different.
I've had that too, and I thought that was just beginners like not knowing, but I'm wondering if maybe that's why it's picking up in popularity. Kind of the squirreliness of it almost, because so many people got into like the bedroom producer and everything's on the laptop and all this digital and all the plugins, all that stuff is it's all so predictable. It's gonna do the exact same thing if you set it up in the exact same way. It got really easy, and then maybe it got too easy and people are kind of looking for more of a challenge or something.
I think that's absolutely the case.
Yeah.
So I think, and also for performance, people realize that going up in front of a crowd and hitting play and maybe changing like the cutoff on a filter or something once in a while was it's not fun. It's not fun.
That's,
for the performer. And, certainly there are going to be people in the audience that don't, they don't really pay attention or they don't care what's going on. But if I had to play the same set every night, the same songs, just hitting play, it would not be fun for me.
No, I when I first started playing out, and even up until now, I'm still trying to figure out like my mode, but I would bring a synthesizer and a guitar with me, but most of everything you'd hear would be like me triggering a backing track. And don't have any judgment towards people who do that. I don't want to try to be a jerk about it, but I just personally felt kind of fraudulent and got bored, and I wasn't excited about shows. And so I think modular has really kind of been like, oh, this is a way I could have a lot of fun and keep going with that like improv thing that I picked up from the Monster Planet guys and everything. So
it is a little intimidating when you're playing a set and you don't know anything about what it's going to be like. Like, I think I have talked to a lot of people who have real anxiety about that, and it's held them back from going completely modular because it's a leap, right? Yeah. Like, when you show up to do a set and you are starting with a completely blank slate every time, and even if you do patch it up the same way, it's going to be a little different every time. It's really something where what I've found is it requires that you put the hours in, and you do that at home day after day. You start from the blank slate day after day, and then eventually you start to be able to put together almost like little macros or patterns on your system where you're like, okay, if I hook this up to this and this, I've found something that is pretty much the same every time that I can start with, and then you improvise off of that basic, but it really requires a lot more time starting from scratch over and over with the system than making a track in Ableton once and then hitting play and maybe dabbling over the top of that. Right. But knowing that you've got this kind of backbone underneath that's supporting the performance. Like with modular, you could turn one knob and suddenly all the music goes away. Yeah. And you're like, oh, what did I just do?
Yeah. It's like learning a new instrument, but it is an instrument, but it's a totally different, like where guitar or drums takes kind of a dexterity and a good sense of rhythm and time to play on a beat. This is a lot more cerebral, I feel like, than I feel like playing an instrument, drums or guitar, is almost like primal and animalistic, and there's a lot of fun with that. This definitely seems a lot more mad scientist-y, and
yeah, a little bit, and you have to really think too. Like you can't just randomly plug things in and hope for the best, especially in a performance. At home you can do that, and sometimes that's a good way to generate interesting new things you wouldn't have thought of otherwise. But it's been fun watching kids play with modular. So we do kids events from time to time. We have an event called Noisy Kids.
Yeah, I've seen pictures.
Yeah, so we do that event in collaboration with Monster Planet and Mojito. And it's a blast because you get to see... So basically we set up a bunch of stations with synthesizers and some modular stations. And we invite kids of all ages to come and just play on the gear all afternoon. And it's one of the most fun things that we do. And it's been really successful. And what we found is that, kids will go up to something like a make noise shared system, which is incredibly complex. Yeah. And for a lot of adults would be very intimidating. And they'll go up to it and they'll just start experimenting, like plugging things in and and turning knobs and seeing how that changes the sound. And they don't know what a filter is or a VCO or whatever. They have no idea. So that's not what's going through their mind. They're just like, well, I have a cable in my hand and I'm going to plug it in here and I'm going to see if that makes a difference in the sound. And that kind of approach, I think as adults, if we can adapt that consciously from time to time and just forget about all the math and forget about what it is that we're actually doing and just raw experimentation. I think that's a really interesting approach to improvisation that everyone should try out.
I can't imagine 12-year-old or even 8-year-old me playing with a modular. I'd probably be a totally different person if I would have been introduced to it at that age. I'm
just thinking about I hadn't really thought about that before, like how, as a a child who was really interested in like, like synthesizers, but that's a totally different kind of synthesizer than the kind I grew up on.
Totally.
I mean, that's advanced, you know?
Yeah,
So.
especially the make noise system. I've gone into the showroom a few times to try to play with that, because I've played with the maths and like a telharmonic here and there, but all of that together, it's kind of like it's very, very steep learning curve, because all their stuff's so weird, but so cool.
Yeah, it is really cool, because once you play with it for a while, you start to understand the thought process of the design, and then it all starts to make sense. But it's not like any other system that's out there. So it's like you're having to kind of learn your way around someone else's imagination.
Yeah.
And then make it kind of take that and then say, okay, what am I going to do with this?
That's a cool way to think about it.
So, yeah.
That makes more sense.
Once it takes some hours on the system to start to understand how it was, meant to be used versus how you're going to then take that and extend it and make it your own idea,
They're kind of like the opposite of Doepfer.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot more improvisation involved, for sure. Yeah.
So how is there like one moment in time where somebody said, hey, check out my modular synthesizer, and they like let you play with it, and then it was kind of all over from there, or was it a gradual?
I would say it was pretty gradual. My first exposure to a modular synth was probably like late 90s.
Okay.
And that was a Doepfer system, and I thought it was the greatest thing.
Yeah.
I could see the potential of it. I didn't actually purchase any modular gear for a long time after that. I had been doing a lot on the computer. I'd done quite a bit of music just using Macs and Ableton, and I had some older synths that I was making music with, and just enjoying that. And doing a lot with plugins, and just like, kind of following that path. And then it was about probably 3 or 4 years ago when Eurorack started to really take off that I was like, oh, okay, maybe we should think about getting into modular. And, we were lucky enough to get a pretty significant sized .com system.
Uh-huh.
And that's a 5-use system. It's not Eurorack system, but it was almost like a crash course in how do you, really use a system like that to make the kind of music that I've been wanting to make, right?
Yeah. That's not Mort, is it?
Yeah.
Or Mort,
yeah.
How would you describe Mort, other than a giant portion of your wall in your living room?
It's... Okay, the way I would describe Mort is initially intimidating, and you're like, oh my god, it's like this huge, it's taller than I am. But the thing about it is, you can break it down into the same components as a really simple Doepfer system.
Okay.
Really, right? Like you have your VCA, your VCO, your filters. It's just that maybe you've got 9 oscillators in the system instead of only 1 or 2. And there's some bells and whistles, but the basic building blocks are really the same as any analog synth that's out there.
Is this part of it here?
Yeah, so
Okay.
Right in front of us here we have what we call Mortable, which is a portable version of Mort consisting of just 2 oscillators, 2 envelope generators, a VCA, a couple of fun modules like a noise and sample and hold, and then a couple filters, and a little 4-channel mixer. One of the nice things about the synthesizers.com systems is the oscillators and the filters are modeled after the old Moog modulars. Moog has always been known for having just really, really good bass, and they did a great job of replicating that in the synthesizers.com modules.
So, I wanted to let's talk about how you got started with Patchwerks with Tom.
So Tom Butcher, my business partner in Patchwerks, we've known each other for about 20 years now.
Okay.
It's been a long time. We happened to both attend the NAMM conference 3 years ago, and I didn't even know he was going to be there. And NAMM, for anyone who doesn't know, is a music retail conference where a lot of the new product announcements happen, and it's just a crazy show.
Comic-Con for gearheads.
Yeah, essentially. So we ran into each other and started talking, and you know, it was pretty obvious. This was 3 years ago now, almost, and it was pretty obvious that Seattle didn't have a synthesizer store and really needed one, because by that point, you know, Portland had Control Voltage, and that store was very successful and just a great place to hang out, and you know, we were really wishing that Seattle had something like that. So we both had the idea and were tossing it around independently, but once we realized, oh, well, it just makes sense for us to work together on this project, it was just a no-brainer at that point. We were very fortunate to find the location that we have through friends.
That. Yeah.
And it took us about probably 3 or 4 months of just getting inventory together, doing all the work to get the shop ready to open, and then we had a grand opening just before Thanksgiving, the end of 2016. And that was our grand opening. And so for the first few months, we just operated out of those 3 little rooms in the back, and it was like a little secret speakeasy type situation, because you had to walk kind of around the palm reader ladies off, you know, shop and down the alley and up the stairs, and you know, we didn't have a real street front presence at that point, but it was cool.
Yeah.
It was fun to be. We were just excited to be really up and running at that point. And you know, before we opened the shop, we had been doing synth meetups. We had 3 or 4 of those last year, where we would just get a big space for the day and invite people to bring whatever gear they wanted out. And we also had a number of workshops and tables set up by the manufacturers and dealers, people that we were buying gear from as well.
Right.
And those events were just huge successes, and so it really made us realize that there was a good community, that this was something that Seattle really needed, and it helped us spread the word about what we were planning to do and opening the shop. So we have an online store and a brick and mortar store as well. We have a little area in the back that's big enough to have workshops and classes, and we are trying to do as many of those events as we can.
Yeah.
So I gotta say, like, that neighborhood is pretty ideal.
You're kind of like pretty close to that overpass, so you guys can be as loud as you want.
That's true.
Because like, and it doesn't really affect being inside. You don't really notice it, and then you walk outside and you can hear the freeway, but you can't tell inside. Yep. And then you can have your shows and your demonstrations and everything, and
go as late as we want. Yeah, we'll never get a noise complaint. No. And the neighbors, there are neighbors, but they're completely supportive 100% of what we're doing, and are super into it and enthusiastic, and you know, really a great little community that we have there. So yeah, it's nice.
I can't believe it's already been a year, but I think it's just going to keep going. I think it already has become a staple of the music community, and I think it's definitely going to be one of those things, you know, that like you talk about record stores, everybody knows Sonic Boom and Easy Street, and I think Patchwerks is going to kind of like blaze the trail for us like gearheads to have our own little place. So, yeah, it's great, and we have big plans for next year, and we're going to keep growing and expanding and offering more services and lessons and all kinds of new projects that we're working on. So yeah, I'm excited. All right, well, let's before we reset up, let's just do this now. So I have got an envelope with adjectives and an envelope with nouns. There's not a lot in there, and I basically just asked on Facebook, so I just randomly took what people posted on me. So if they're not that, I tried to avoid anything that was, you know, like inappropriate or anything like that. But so yeah, don't kill the messenger if you don't like the words, audience. But let's do adjective first. All right, so I'm gonna draw an adjective. Yep. And the adjective
is ubiquitous.
Ubiquitous.
That's a good one.
Okay. And then there's your nouns.
All right. And our noun is silver.
Ubiquitous silver. That sounds like that could lend itself to a patch.
All right. I like it.
But before we get to this patch, a quick word from our sponsor. Vallejo, one of the most sought-out emerging dance theater companies in New York and Mexico, made a very wise decision in commissioning composer Madeline Kokeles to score their project SOS. This masterfully executed EP is part of a larger dance score in collaboration with Vallejo Dance Company for their upcoming Season 4 program. Written and produced from a hospital bed following the birth of her second child, SOS arrives as awe-inspiring as we have come to expect when expecting a new batch of songs from Madeline Kokeles. Go to selfcenter.bandcamp.com/album/SOS to check it out.
I'm just going to describe what we have set up here. So I've got a small synthesizers.com 5U system, and I've got one oscillator hooked up right now with the second available for us to use, probably as an LFO. I've got that running through a filter and straight into a 4-channel mixer, and then out into my Eurorack system. So I have the audio from that system going into an IntelliGel Rainmaker module, which is a spectral rhythm delay module that has all kinds of fun effects on it. We also have a Korg SQ1 to provide some basic sequencing functionality, and I also have a couple other modules set up in this case, including a quad pingable LFO by 4MS and a spectral multiband resonator also by 4MS, which is just a really nice way to add a little bit of color
I love their
to
stuff.
the sound. Yeah, it's fantastic. And the LFO is great because it's got 4 different separate LFOs, so we can be controlling 4 different things at the same time,
cool.
which is really great. And then I also have a Korg Volca FM handy if we decide to add some additional sounds. It's not modular, but those things are great just to kind of throw in over top if you've got something already going. And so ubiquitous silver. Here we go. So I'm going to start with I've got it playing a random sequence right now, so we'll go ahead and iterate on that and kind of start seeing what comes out on that theme. evolved into something starting with like in a random sequence, and now it's kind of evolved into something that's a little more, at least for me, like thinking about the theme. I think we're a little closer to that than we were at the beginning.
It's been a good transition for sure. If you recorded this as a track on an album and called it Ubiquitous Silver, I would sign on for that.
Good work.
For sure. And we won't count power supply and mixer.
Okay, so I would love to have an Intelligel Metropolis sequencer. I don't have one here, but the Metropolis is probably my favorite Eurorack sequencer right now. It's got 8 stages. Each stage can be skipped, or it can be a hold, or an individual note, or a rest, and it can be. There's so much capability for control on the Metropolis that it's just super fun to play with.
Yeah.
And it can save and load patterns.
Nice. That's huge.
You know, I don't consider that cheating. So that would be number 1. For a VCO, the Make Noise DPO would be my top choice.
I haven't even heard of that one.
So it's a dual oscillator, totally analog, amazing sound, and there's a lot of features. You can really modulate one oscillator with the other in some really interesting ways. It's just an all-around really great VCO. I definitely would want my Rainmaker because I use it constantly. I do a lot of ambient kind of drone type music. So it's a digital module, but I love it.
That's Intelligel, right?
Yeah. Yeah, Intelligel is one of my favorite Eurorack manufacturers. Mutable Instruments Rings is another one.
That's a cool one.
I could not be on a desert island without. I've gotten some really crazy sounds out of the rings.
Yeah.
Like just it's really, really a wonderful module to do kind of physical modeling string type sounds with. And then, if I had to pick, I think I'm allowed one more.
Yeah. I think 5 is so small, but I feel like a 10 module list would probably take a while to walk through.
So it's not a module, but one thing I definitely would recommend that we just recently discovered, and you may have seen this at the shop when you were there, the Landscape All Flesh controllers. Have you seen those? They're like little thumb pads. So I could plug one in here and one in here, and what you do is you put your finger on the pad here, and your body acts as the cable. So
that's crazy.
I'm not saying it eliminates the need for cables, because you're always going to have all these connections that you want to be stable. But if you're just interested in seeing what happens if I plug this into that, you can just plug them in and put your fingers on them.
That's crazy. Now, are they 16 or quarter?
They're Eurorack format. Yeah, so they're the little 1/8" size cables. But you just buy them as a kit. You can get 5 pairs for $25. You have to solder them yourself. But it's pretty straightforward. And then you've got these instant patch points, so that it's really great for doing demos of a big system, because for me to reach from here to here, like a 4 or 5 foot span, I would need to have all these really long cables to do that. But we can use those and just demo modules to people at the shop without having to have all these really long cables.
I imagine it could have some cool live performance applications as well.
Oh, it's cool. And then you start to ask, well, what happens if I put my left hand on 2 of them and my right hand on 1 of them? What happens then? And it's all just electricity, right?
Yeah.
So it's biological. It's physical.
That's crazy. What are they called?
Landscape is the company, and All Flesh.
All Flesh
is the name of them.
I would have definitely picked some up. I well, now it's just another reason to go back and hang out at the store, I guess.
Yeah, we've been having a lot of fun with those the last few weeks.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. This is like makes me see how much fun this is going to be to like just go see how other people walk through all their stuff. And
well, that's the best thing about modular is it really allows you to be expressive in your own individual way, probably more than any other way of making music with electronics. So
yeah,
sky's the limit.
Right on. Well, thanks again.
Yeah, thanks a lot. This has been fun.
Yeah, we got an hour and 20, or let's see.